Welcome to Timeless with Julie Hartman Live. We are still live from New York City, and thankfully I am safe despite the amount of time that I have spent near or around Columbia University. Actually doing quite okay. It is Tuesday, April 30th, 2024. I'm so happy as always to be with you, as I am to be with Sean McConnell in the producer's dungeon, though I'm quite far away from you right now, but great to be with you on YouTube Live at the very least. I'll be back in the.
You're not wearing a Palestinian scarf.
I'm not wearing a keffiyeh. That is right.
Keffiyeh.
I happen to just leave my keffiyeh at home. No, it's surprising that one hasn't just like landed on me. And I haven't been walking around with one, being around that environment. My gosh, as we discussed yesterday on the show, quite the experience being up there. But it's been really good to see it for myself, as well as to talk with some Columbia students like Ola, how fantastic she was yesterday. For those who didn't catch that interview, I spoke with a senior at Columbia who is normal, as I say, and she just gave a very sobering picture of what is going on there and what her final few weeks of senior year, which should be a carefree, fun time, are like. And it's very sobering, to put it mildly. 844-861-5537, 844-861-5537 is the call-in number, and I am going to monitor the chat right now. Although, Sean, you're like the chat guru. And a lot of people reference you in the chat. Sometimes I look at them after and I'm like, wow, there's this fascination with Sean.
It's really odd too, because I don't know how to read.
Well, this is a good way to learn. Oh, someone is writing respect from Bangladesh and Armenia. That is so cool. You know, it's very interesting sometimes for me to see how many international listeners there are, you know, with this show, which clearly has millions of people tuning in at all times. There's actually a lot of international people, though. Jokes aside, I get emails from someone in Ireland the other day, someone in Venezuela actually emailed me recently. They could just be Americans, like lying that they're from some cool international place, but I'll take them at their word. So hello to you in Bangladesh or Armenia or both. So did I already say the date? I always like to start off with the date because
yes, you did.
Things happen. I did. Okay. Tuesday, April 30th, 2024. Every day these days is a turning point in our country. I want to start off by discussing some updates on the Columbia situation, but that's only going to be like 3 to 4 minutes because for the bulk of today's episode, we're going to be talking about Donald Trump's Time magazine interview. That dropped this morning. We have a picture of the cover if you guys want to put it up so that people can see Donald Trump's stern face on the cover of Time magazine. And the title of the article is How Far Will Trump Go If and When He is Reelected in November? Yes, you're seeing right now the cover. The cover says if he wins, and then the title of the article is How Far Will He Go? So yours truly decided to read the entire transcript of this article in full. To my knowledge, there is not a video of it right now. That would be a lot easier. If there were a video, I would just have put it on double speed and watched it. But on the subway today, yes, by the way, I went on the subway, which actually we should talk about because holy moly, it is so bad. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, you know, white girl from LA gets on the subway and she's scared. Yeah, white girl from LA gets on the subway and she's scared. There is a reason to be scared on the subway.
You didn't get punched?
It's really. Oh, Sean, you don't understand. I was in fight mode. It's actually like really horrible. We're laughing about it, but it is quite horrible. I was on the subway looking around at just crazy people. You know, I'll pause. I'll give this 45 seconds of our time before we get on to the to the real meat and potatoes of this episode. But I'll tell you two quick stories. So last night, I went on the subway to go to Brooklyn to see one of my best friends from college for dinner. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna be brave. I'm gonna go on the subway. I'm not gonna take an Uber, even though I haven't been on the subway in 10 years because I don't live in New York. And at the risk of sounding dramatic, it was really as bad as people make it out to be. First of all, the facilities being underground, it is, I actually don't even know how to describe it. It's like, it's truly like being in a sewer. Also, it is so decrepit, it almost looks like the aftermath of like a bombing. And again, I know this sounds very dramatic, but it was so dark and gross and dirty, and things were like falling. It was horrible. And I was standing there and I thought, I've never been more conservative in my entire life than this moment. We live in the United States of America and our public transportation looks like this. Full pause before we even get to the people. Just the facilities themselves were so decrepit. And as some of you know, I was recently in London a few months ago. I was also in Rome recently, and I took public transportation in both of those cities. Every day in London, I took the tube. And let me tell you, it doesn't have to be this way. We think that this is kind of par for the course with any kind of public transportation. It's going to look decrepit. You're going to have weird people. And to some extent, that may be true. But let me tell you, the tube in London is the most efficient, polite, well-run thing in the world. I was looking around. There were no gang, like graffiti etchings on the glass. I was looking at the floor of the subway. There wasn't any gum. The people were super polite. Like there was nobody twitching or freaking out or yelling something at you. I was like, my gosh, this is like civilization. This is totally orderly. So back to last night, I'm looking around. The facilities are absolutely horrible. And then you get on the subway and the door's shut. And all of a sudden, this guy starts yelling. And I'm going, oh God, I'm going to die. And this guy starts saying, you know, I don't want to disturb anybody. I don't want to disturb you, but I'm a single father and we need cash. And all of a sudden, these like 3 kids get up. They were dispersed on the subway and it was horribly sad. They were like maybe 7 to 8 years old, these 3 kids. And they're holding a Sour Patch and they're holding Pop-Tarts. And they start chanting, candy, 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 candy. And they're walking around holding out candy for us to buy as the guy continues to yell, you know, don't want to bother anybody, but we really need this money. It was just, the whole thing was, it was so sad. It was uncomfortable. It was just crazy. That was the first car ride. By the way, I'm realizing this is longer than 45 seconds, but it's worth it. It's worth the time to tell you this story. The next stop, those guys get off. A really, really strung out guy, like, again, this is horribly sad. As I'm doing this, I don't mean to make fun of this individual. I'm trying to paint a picture for you of what it was really like. He's like, you know, twitching from side to side, totally not in control of himself. Gets on the subway. He's talking aloud to himself. And he looks at me. Maybe he sensed my fear because I was sitting there like, I just need to get to Brooklyn and get off the subway. And thank God that he kept me alive. But this guy gets on and he looks at me and he goes, you're really pretty. Can I sit next to you? And I'm going, oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. No, literally, Sean, I'm, you know, when your gut tells you not to do something, but then you push yourself to do it. My gut was telling me yesterday, don't get on the subway. Don't. But my head was saying, Julie, come on, like, don't be like this. You know, don't wimp out. You're in New York. Be a woman, get on the subway. I'm sitting there as this is happening. I'm going, I did that whole episode on gut and projection and following your instincts, and I'm a fraud. I'm a fraud, damn it. I should have listened to my gut and not gone on the subway. This guy goes, you're really pretty. Can I sit next to you? I just say nothing. He comes, he sits next to me. I jump up. I walk to the other end of the subway. He follows me. And I'm going, I'm going to get stabbed. Something is going to happen. Meanwhile, none of the New Yorkers on the subway care. No one's looking at this. And anyway, to make a long story short, I tapped some guy with earphones, got his attention, and I said, please help me. And the guy told the other guy to stay away. But yeah, that was the story on the subway. And similar thing happened this morning with the candy. Apparently, this is a very common thing, and it was just horrendously sad. Sean, what are your reactions to my subway story? I'm sorry. I'm really sorry for the tangent.
No, it sounds like paradise. I get to ride the subway. I get to buy Pop-Tarts, and people tell me I'm pretty. Psh, I'm in.
You know what, Sean? Then, honey, you come on the subway. I will gladly give you you pay for my Uber, and I will pay the $2.50 for you to get Pop-Tarts and told that you're pretty.
I feel for you. I believe you're supposed to not make eye contact, Julie. You're supposed to keep your head down. And
I didn't, Sean. I didn't. But they sniffed. It's like you know when a dog sniffs out fear in people. Yeah. I swear they were sniffing out fear in me, and it was totally warranted. By the way, just reading the chat. Someone's writing you're not supposed to make eye contact. Thank you. Yes, between Columbia and the subway, I'm really in the trenches here in New York City. Someone's writing, I'm a Brooklynite and I took the subway today. Julie's right. Sadly, we're used to it. This really could be an entire episode of how quickly things have descended all across the board in the United States and how we just take it. Like we just become used to it. I totally understand why this guy is saying that. But I was sitting there and I was going, this is just not the way civilization is supposed to be. People should not be afraid going, on their 20-minute commute to work. And especially as a woman, it's a very, very scary thing when someone like that approaches you, and you're locked in there. It was really bad. But everything else has been relatively smooth about the New York trip. So let's move on to talk about Columbia. Just a quick update before we go on to the Trump stuff. So last night, students, unsurprisingly, did not clear the encampments, even though the university president ordered them to and threatened suspension. Instead, they decided to storm one of the main academic buildings on campus called Hamilton Hall. Sean, totally okay, but do we have that clip? Is it possible to play that? If not, I can go. Oh, great. Mm-hmm. All right, cool. Let's roll it. Weird stuff going on. Weird. So when that happened, the Columbia University Apartheid Divest group posted on Instagram, quote, an autonomous group of students has taken matters into their own hands. They will remain in Hamilton Hall until the university divests from death. So these students are doubling down. And then over the past 2 hours, according to the Epoch Times, a Columbia spokesperson named Ben Chang has come out and said, quote, students occupying the building face expulsion. So over the past few days, as we know, everything's just been kicked up a notch. It was encampments, and then they wouldn't clear the encampments, and then they were threatened with suspension, and then there was a curfew, and then they stayed past the curfew, and then there was another curfew, and then there were more threats, and then now they have smashed glass, stormed into one of the main buildings, and now the university is threatening expulsion. And they better damn follow through. Because this behavior cannot be tolerated. It is so sick and irresponsible and entitled and destructive, it cannot be tolerated. But second, if they don't bite the way that they bark, they lose all credibility. I mean, I think they've already lost all credibility, quite frankly. But if they fail to expel these individuals after coming out and saying that they would, then this is only going to run rampant and continue, because the students are getting the idea, and they're right to get the idea, that the university won't do anything. So that's the update from Columbia. Sean, what do you think about this? You were saying something to me off the air about something shady that you noticed in the video.
The video's suspect to me. It seems like a photo opportunity. There's camera people inside. The guy who breaks the window then turns around and puts a bike lock on the door. I don't understand the whole process of it, but I don't know. I don't know what to make of it.
I mean, all of this is obviously unfolding in real time, and we're going to learn a lot more in the coming days and weeks. But there have been a lot of people online who've speculated that in addition to students, there may be outside actors. I mean, obviously, when I was outside of Columbia, I saw many outside groups there on the sidewalk. But some people have been speculating that some of those people in the video may not be students. They're with students, but not all of them may be students. They may be plants. And it sounds like a conspiracy theory, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were some other individuals trying to make this a bigger thing and egg on the students as this is all going on. So we'll see. Yours truly did warn in her senior speech at Harvard that if we did not stand up to these rancid woke students, that, quote, our civilization would face a somber reckoning. I'm sorry to be this chick to say I told you so, but I told you so. I mean, this was clear. This was quite clear for some time that it would head in a really, really bad direction. So keep you updated on Columbia, hoping that everybody there is safe, and hopefully this can get resolved as quickly as possible. So, bulk of today, we're going to be discussing Donald Trump's Time magazine interview, which dropped this morning. It's an 83-minute read. I read it as I was also scanning for weird people on the subway. I read almost every word of it. And I want to specifically focus on 3 issues. And this interview covered a lot of issues, a lot of Trump's opinions. But I want to focus on 3 and really look at what Donald Trump said about what he thinks, believes, and will do about those issues if and when he is elected in November. Because as we know, there is so much misinformation surrounding Donald Trump and what he thinks, believes, and will do. And I say, let's hear it from the horse's mouth. Like let's actually look at what the person says instead of, going by hearsay or what the outside narratives are. So the 3 issues I want to profile here are what Donald Trump said about abortion, what Donald Trump said about Israel, and what Donald Trump said about how he would treat President Biden, Fani Willis, and his political opponents. And if there's one TLDR from this discussion, it's that Donald Trump, at least in this interview, and I believe, and with evidence more generally, is far more nuanced than people give him credit for. You can agree or disagree with what you're about to hear him say. But I hope that we can all agree that it is a far more nuanced take than what the media and what the media is reporting and what everyday Americans understand him to believe. You know, part of my being here in New York is that I've been guest hosting for Dennis Prager. Guest hosted his national radio show yesterday morning, and then I guest hosted for him this morning. And yesterday I interviewed Caroline Leavitt, who is Donald Trump's national press secretary. And we had a really interesting conversation about polling and how a lot of Americans from across many different demographics are appearing to really come around to see that Donald Trump was a great president and that Donald Trump is the person that we need in 2024 for the next 4 years to lead our country out of the mess that President Biden has gotten us in. And we were discussing how even very liberal, left-wing, mainstream news outlets have, to their credit, been very honest with this polling data. And I just want to quickly run through some of them because the trends are working very much in former President Donald Trump's favor. And I think it indicates that more and more people are seeing that a lot of what is said about him, or a lot of what he is purported to think and believe, is not always in accordance with reality, to put it mildly. So according to a recent New York Times Siena poll, Donald Trump is performing better than Joe Biden in several issues pertaining to immigration, law enforcement, etc. And interestingly, this New York Times Siena poll found that people are viewing Donald Trump more favorably now on those issues than they did even from 2016 to 2020. So across, again, foreign policy, law enforcement, the border, and the economy, Donald Trump is up several points as far as those who were polled, the way that they rate him now versus how they rated him from 2016 to 2020. And as the New York Times says in their headline, Donald Trump is viewed more favorably in retrospect. 42% of those polled said that they found Donald Trump to be, quote, mostly good for the United States, whereas only 25% of those polled said that they found President Biden to be, quote, mostly good for the United States. It's a pretty stark thing and a pretty big disparity. Additionally, as I've talked about on this show, Donald Trump has, according to the New York Times Siena poll, gone up majorly from where he was in 2020 with regard to the black vote. And Joe Biden has gone down majorly as far as where he was in 2020 with regard to the black vote. In 2020, got a load of this, President Biden, according to the New York Times, had a 92% approval or support. Let me clarify. In 2020, President Biden had 92% of Black Americans who were polled supporting him. Now, with the same poll, President Biden went from 92% to 66%. President Trump in 2020, according to this poll, had 3% of the black vote. Now he has 23%. So Donald Trump's going up, Joe Biden's going down majorly with that demographic. Another demographic, Donald Trump is leading Latinos 66% to President Biden's 60%. To give you just another thing, even CNN today came out with their own polls where they found that people view Donald Trump more favorably in retrospect, and that most people tend to, again, of those polled, do tend to prefer Donald Trump to Joe Biden. Quote, this is reading from the Wall Street Journal, reporting secondhand on the CNN poll. Quote, assessing Biden's time in office so far, 61% say his presidency has been a failure, while 39% say it's been a success. 52% say that there's no chance that they would support Biden, while a fewer amount, 47%, say there's no chance that they would back Trump. So people are waking up. People are seeing it. And I want to say, too, I intend on this show to talk more about Donald Trump and the reason why I am voting for him this November. It doesn't mean that I support or endorse everything he has ever said and done. But I really plan to discuss this more and really lay out why I am not only voting for him, but why I am proud to vote for him. Because we so often, and especially I can speak to this as a young woman, we are so often demonized and made to be a pariah for supporting Donald Trump. I can't tell you how many times people have said to me, like, oh, you're a woman. How could you support Trump? Or you're selling out democracy by supporting Trump. We always have people coming at us constantly for supporting Trump. And it's just fascinating to me because people who support Biden, they really don't get the same kind of pushback. Of course, this may happen in some cases, but really generally, who really ever gets in a Biden supporter's face and goes, oh, you support Biden? So that means you support this, you support that, you support that. There's not that same kind of vitriol that's funneled towards Biden supporters as there is towards Trump supporters. And I'm sick of it. I'm sick of apologizing. I'm sick of having to throw out these caveats, that I don't agree with everything that he has said and done. Sure, those caveats are important, but I'm so sick of engaging in these Maoist self-criticism sessions for my support of Donald Trump. The evidence is in. From 2016 to 2020, domestically and internationally, the country was doing far better than it is now from 2020 to 2024 under Joe Biden. It really is that simple. The evidence is in domestically and internationally from the 4 years versus the 4 years. And I am going to stand up and defend that record because it needs to be defended now more than ever. I really believe, apropos of all this Columbia craziness, we are at a point in our country where we cannot be ashamed, we cannot hide. We have to stand up, defend our country, defend Western civilization, and defend the people, and right now that is Donald Trump, who is best equipped to support those two things. So let's talk about abortion. A little bit of a quick segue. Sean, I'm curious, what do you think? I know that, at times you haven't always loved things that Donald Trump has said and done. What do you think about what I just said of really being sick of having to explain myself all the time?
I understand your argument. I said I wasn't going to talk about this, but last night I watched the Stormy documentary on Peacock, and it was, from her perspective, and she's a victim and yada yada. But it made me relive all the years that we went through with that, and it reminded me that Donald Trump, from a moral standpoint, is suspect. I get the argument that these are unconventional times and he might be the right person to combat the unconventionality of our times. I think people that are openly supporting Biden reek to me of the same people that are still wearing masks. I don't know how you can be gung-ho for Biden. I don't understand it. And similarly, I don't understand people that are gung-ho for Trump without some reservation or defense of the fact that his presidency, the numbers-wise, were better than Biden's. I think Biden is just an embarrassment, and Trump seems to be the better choice of the two. And I just lament that this is where we are in our country, that this is our choice. But it seems undoubtedly that you must vote for Trump. I don't see how you can logically or financially vote for Biden at this point.
Well, let me pause, and I know you agree with this, Sean, and say that I am a true defender of democracy. And if you vote for Joe Biden, I may happen to think that is one of the worst decisions that you could possibly make. I happen to think that the man is despicable. His policies are certainly despicable. I believe he has ruined our country and perhaps our world. But that's your right. And I will defend your right to vote for Joe Biden. So anybody who's listening, I know we have liberals who watch the show. I'm so grateful that we have liberals who watch the show. That's your choice. That's democracy. But in my view, I actually, and we could talk about this for so long, and perhaps one day we will. Yes, there have Donald Trump's personal life, as you saw, I guess, watching that documentary, is not great at all. But I'm not voting for a husband, I'm not voting for a friend. I'm voting for a leader. And I believe that personal integrity matters. I wish that we had, I guess, people with more sterling reputations in running for office. But sometimes when people throw out the character argument so much, I go, or the personal integrity argument, I go, again, we're not voting for a husband here. We are voting for a leader. And he, speaking of personal, integrity, I think he was a fantastic president in so many ways. And what he has done for our country in the midst of all of the persecution and the onslaught that he has faced, I think is really heroic. It is, in my view, it is truly heroic. All of the lies that have been told about him and his family, going to court, he's in, facing this crazy New York trial right now. We forget that this is a person, and he has not always been perfect by any means. There are many things he has said and done that I take serious issue with, but I can also say that I'm so grateful for his perseverance in continuing against that onslaught, because as he often says, they're not coming for me, they're coming for you. I'm just standing in the way. And it's true. There is a massive discrimination push against conservatives in this country.
I totally agree with you. I think he
Yeah.
stands as the figurehead against the crazy wokeness that we see in this country. It makes perfect sense to me that we are down to a binary choice. You can wish all day long, and ifs and buts were candy and nuts, we'd all have a fine day. This is your choice. You either vote for Uncle Ice Cream Eatin' Joe, who his track record has proven to ruin your 401k, just based financially, or foreign affairs wise. You have to see that Trump is the better choice. It's not a matter
or the Title IX overhaul
of moral perfection.
All of those things.
Neither of these candidates are morally perfect in any way. They're not even close. But this is your choice. You have to go into the box and you have to pick one or the other, or you throw your vote away. Your choice. And I have to choose Trump.
Yep. All right, so let's look here at these three issues, because again, the point that I really want to hammer home today is that whether or not you agree or disagree with what Donald Trump is saying here, I hope that we can acknowledge that it is far more nuanced than anybody gives him credit for. And in fact, on a lot of these issues, I happen to really think that these are strong positions. Not on each one, but I really respect what he is saying on these three. So let's start with abortion. Keeping it so light. Start with like the most hot button issue in the country right now.
And that's another thing, Julie. I work with Larry
Yeah.
Elder, and one of the things he always says is, don't look at the swing, look at where the ball lands. And so you kind of have to get over the personality of Trump and do what you're doing right now, which is point out where the ball lands, the policies and the things that will be done by Donald Trump. It's not about personality, it's about policy.
That's right. And that, again, that's why I always say I'm not voting for a husband, I'm voting for a president. I would not marry Donald Trump. I would, but I will vote for him as my president. That's a great Larry quote. He's got a few of those up his sleeve. But yes, let's start with abortion. So this is, again, I'm going off of the Time magazine interview, the full transcript of this, which I have read. in full. And this is so important because one of the main campaign strategies of the Biden-Harris reelection campaign is abortion. Because let's face it, they know that President Biden has not exactly been the best president on most issues. That is the most colossal understatement I've ever made in my life. They also know that he's a senile old man, and they see that the polls show that Americans also know that he's a senile old man. So they are really, really pushing this abortion issue. And what they're kind of doing is running on the fact that, like, people are just going to overlook all of the insanity, the open border, the economy, the Title IX overhaul, the Afghanistan withdrawal, the cash flushing to Iran, the fact that he is, as the Hunter Biden laptop shows, bought off by foreign nationals, including people tight with the CCP. They're basically counting on the fact that Americans will overlook those things because of abortion. And so here's a short video of Kamala Harris about 2-3 weeks ago saying what Donald Trump would do if he was elected on the abortion issue.
So here's what a second Trump term looks like. More bans, more suffering, and less freedom. Just like he did in Arizona, he basically wants to take America back to the 1800s.
Oh, come on. It's absolutely ridiculous. And, you know, here's the thing. I've said this on this show all the time, and it's such a credit to conservatives that I say this so often, and I have never gotten anything close to vitriol. I'm very conflicted myself on the subject of abortion. It's a very tricky thing. I'm not a pro-life absolutist, and I'm not a pro-choice absolutist. Legally and morally, I'm in a gray area about it. But when Kamala Harris gets up and says stuff like that, it's so obviously a lie. It's so obviously in bad faith. And also, I don't like this whole, like, pandering to me on this issue because I'm a woman. Please appeal to my intellect and not to my genitals as to why I should legally or morally support a woman's right to terminate a pregnancy. Please actually treat me with respect, and let's have a serious conversation about this instead of just tossing around these things, as she said recently, that, you know, oh, women have fewer rights than their mothers and grandmothers. I mean, come on. That's just a very bad faith argument. There are very, very principled reasons to oppose abortion. And it's not because people want to roll back our rights to the 1800s. It's because that is a living thing in there. That is a human being. And we have to be careful and we have to be principled when we are approaching this issue with what to do with the life of a human being. So Donald Trump was asked about this, and it's fascinating what he says, because I want you to pause and think about what most Americans think that Donald Trump believes on abortion, and then we see actually here what he said in the Time magazine article about abortion. So the reporter said to him, "What do you think? You came out this week," the reporter says, "and said that abortion should be left to the states, and you said that you won't sign a federal ban. To be clear, will you veto any bill that imposes any federal restrictions on abortions?" Here's what Trump said: "You don't need a federal ban." Let's pause. So much of what the Democratic Party is saying is, oh my God, Donald Trump is going to have this federal ban and he's going to deny women's rights. Right there, full stop. You don't need a federal ban, he said. He goes on, he's talking about Roe v. Wade, and he said the thing that Roe v. Wade was all about is bringing it back to the states. He says Florida is going to be different from Georgia. Georgia is going to be different from other places, but that's what's happening now. And then he goes on and he goes, quote, "Every legal scholar for 53 years has said that this issue is a state issue from a legal standpoint, and it's starting to work that way." So over and over and over in this interview, I have like 3 examples of when he says it. He is constantly saying, this is a state issue, this is a state issue, this is a state issue. So he is not indicating at all that he wants a federal ban. Again, he was very clear, quote, "You don't need a federal ban." even more than that, he was asked about Florida's laws pertaining to abortion. As we have discussed on the show, Florida had a law banning abortion at 6 weeks. It is very important to know that, yes, they passed this law banning abortion at 6 weeks, but they allowed exceptions for, quote, the life of the mother, rape, incest, and rare fatal fetal abnormalities. That is not something that people tell you about that Florida law. Florida has since passed a subsequent law about a 15-week ban. So Trump was asked about Florida's position on abortion. The reporter said to him, quote, how do you plan to vote in the state's abortion referendum this November that would overturn DeSantis' 6-week ban? And Donald Trump said, basically, I'm not going to tell you how I'm going to vote. But he said, quote, I thought 6 weeks is too severe. So again, if you're listening to this and you're pro-life and you're listening to this and you're pro-choice, okay, you think what you want to think about what Donald Trump is saying. But let's really be honest here. Is this the go back to the 1800s, push that our vice president in that video a few minutes ago was saying? It's a lie. It's a total lie. They completely misrepresent what the man thinks about abortion because they know that is one of their strongest issues. Because a lot of Americans are pro-choice. They do support not, crazy like up until 9 months abortions, but they do support some level of abortions. But he's saying no federal ban, or to be exact, he says, quote, you don't need a federal ban. He's saying that the issue should go back to the states, and that he said that he thought 6 weeks was too severe. And by the way, on this Florida issue, because that question the reporter asked was how Donald Trump plans to vote in the Florida state abortion referendum. So those who are listening who are unaware, that horrible, evil, Handmaid's Tale-esque state of Florida is having a ballot referendum this November, which is called, quote, the Amendment to Limit Government Interference with Abortion. And they, on the ballot this November, are allowing Floridians to vote to enshrine a right to abortion in the Florida state constitution. How many Americans know this? I mean, again, we hear all this crazy stuff from like our vice president about going back to the 1800s and our rights being repealed. Florida is one of the most, if not the most conservative state in the country. Maybe not the most, but certainly up there. And they are allowing Floridians to vote on a ballot referendum to enshrine in their constitution a right to abortion. And by the way, that's my favorite term. I need to stop saying by the way. I'm sorry. And additionally, it would guarantee a woman's right up until 6 months of pregnancy. 6 months. In some cases, actually, it would allow it to be extended beyond 6 months in the case that the health of the mother, in the case that a healthcare provider deems it necessary to protect the health of the mother. This is according to the Wall Street Journal. And health is defined, I'm reading a direct quote here from the Wall Street Journal, in this amendment as a term not limited to physical health. So it could also be mental health. Again, so lest I be like Claudine Gay, I was just reading a direct quote from the Wall Street Journal. But my gosh, is Trump's position and is Florida's position the Handmaid's Tale-esque dystopia that the left makes it out to be? I don't think so. I want to see what you think in the chat. Yeah, people are commenting about the character stuff. And the subway. I feel very, very happy that people are understanding the danger that I faced being on the subway. But okay, so that's what he says about abortion. Sean, you got any comments? It's okay if you don't, but always want to give you the opportunity to cut in with what you think. Or we can move on to Israel.
You're doing a fine job.
You're like, I'm staying out of this abortion thing as a
No,
guy.
no. What is there to
You're like,
say?
I don't wanna touch
I'm a
it.
big fan of states' rights. I think the more we give
Me
power to
too.
the states, the better off we are. The more that's controlled by the national government, the more of a nanny state we become. I'd be so far as to say, I think it was Jefferson that was against a national bank. We'd be better off if banking were left to the states. I think the more control you give to the centralized government, the further we get from the intention of the founding fathers.
That's right. One of the amazing parts of our country is our system of federalism, because it really is, it sort of makes states like their own hubs of innovation, where states can try things, and then if they go well, other states can adopt them, and even the federal government can adopt them. I'll give you a great example of federalism at work. Gay marriage. I mean, gay marriage was one of those things that a few states started to slowly legalize over the decades. I believe Massachusetts was the first state to legalize same-sex marriage. And then more states saw that it was a good thing. I believe it's a good thing. And more states adopted it. And then it eventually went up to the federal government, and the Supreme Court passed it federally. So that is a real boon of our system of federalism that people just don't appreciate, because they don't appreciate most things about America these days, because they're taught to hate it and to not appreciate it. Okay, so that's Trump on abortion. Hardly the Handmaid's Tale-esque, woman-hating, abortion-denying bigot that everybody makes them out to be. Let's go on to Israel, another really, really light, fuzzy subject. But this is important. You got to set the record straight. We really got to set the record straight with this, on what the guy thinks, believes, and says that he will do on these very, very, very important issues. So, like so many issues, Donald Trump has a lot of people from a lot of different factions saying stuff about what he believes. You got, of course, the anti-Israel contingent in this country, who say that, Donald Trump doesn't like the Palestinians, and that he's a white supremacist, and, would genocide Palestinians, the arguments of many of those individuals. And then we also have, and of course I'm speaking in broad brushstrokes here with many of these groups, but then you have some pro-Israel Americans. A lot of pro-Israel Americans do support Donald Trump, but there are also a good amount of maybe liberal or centrist pro-Israel Americans who say, like, yeah, Donald Trump was good on Israel, but he's in the pocket of Netanyahu. And a lot of people who are not conservative in the United States do not like Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel. A lot of people in Israel don't like Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. But you see what I mean, that a lot of different factions of people in this country have these very kind of absolutist opinions about what Donald Trump believes and what he would do with regard to Israel. But if you look at his comments here in this Time magazine article, and if you actually look at his track record during his presidency, he has a very, very nuanced, definitely pro-Israel, but nuanced position on the Israel-Palestine conflict. I just want to show you two quick headlines. Yeah, you're putting them up there. Thank you. CNN wrote, "The Trump-Netanyahu bromance deepened American Jews' divide on Israel." That's a bit of a dated article from 2021. And then the next one here is from the Carnegie Institute, and it said, this is before President Biden was elected, quote, "Trump was great for Netanyahu. Biden will be better for Israel." So it just shows, people believe that Trump is in it for Bibi, and Bibi and Trump are best friends. I've heard a lot of people in my life who are pro-Israel but don't like Trump say this. So let's actually consider what Donald Trump said in the Time magazine article. Let's start with Bibi, the nickname of Benjamin Netanyahu. Here's what Trump said about his bromance, his bro who he's romancing with, Bibi. Quote, Trump said, "I had a bad experience with Bibi." This is when the reporter's asking him about his position on Israel and all that. Trump goes, quote, "I had a bad experience with Bibi, and it had to do with Soleimani, because as you probably know by now, he dropped out just before the attack." So just to pause to clarify, Soleimani was the IRGC, or the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps general who Trump assassinated. Trump ordered the assassination, the drone strike of Qasem Soleimani in Iraq in 2020. And it was immensely successful because it got rid of that evil guy. And it also was one of the many things that Trump did to stop and the terrorist activity of the evil Islamic Republic of Iran. So Trump's saying here that allegedly, according to Trump, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was wanting to partner with the United States in the assassination of Soleimani, but then he backed out at the last minute. Trump continues, quote, "I said, what's that all about? Because it was going to be a joint, and all of a sudden we were told that Israel was not doing it. And I was not happy about that. That was something that I never forgot. And it showed me something." So he's not, again, you can agree with him or disagree with him. You can love Bibi, you can hate Bibi, but Trump is not in the bag for Bibi. In fact, Trump goes on, quote, "I will say this, Bibi Netanyahu rightfully has been criticized for what took place on October 7th. Does that sound like somebody who has a bromance with Bibi? It's a pretty strong statement. Trump has also criticized Israel throughout this. See, again, there are a lot of people in this country who hate Donald Trump, and they go, "Oh, he would never criticize Israel because he's a white supremacist." Of course, all of that argument is crazy, because it's implying that if you support Israel, you're a white supremacist. It's just absolutely nuts. But you know the way that many of these people argue. They say, "Oh, he would never criticize Israel." How about this? From this morning's Time magazine article. Quote, "I think that Israel has done one thing very badly: public relations. I don't think that the IDF or any other group should be sending out pictures every night of buildings falling down and being bombed, with possibly people in those buildings every single night, which is what they do." So much for Trump never criticizing Israel, right? And for those who say that Trump is a white supremacist who doesn't care at all about the Palestinians, let's listen to a statement that Donald Trump said standing next to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu during his presidency. I think this is about 2018, 2019. I don't know the exact year, but it was during his presidency. Listen to what he said about Palestinians. Video 4.
"I was saddened by the fate of the Palestinian people. They deserve a far better life. They deserve the chance to achieve their extraordinary potential. Palestinians have been trapped in a cycle of terrorism, poverty, and violence, exploited by those seeking to use them as pawns to advance terrorism and extremism."
Again, agree or disagree. I'm going to say it a million times. The point of this is to show that the things that many different factions say about Trump reduced him to a kind of caricature. And in reality, the way that he behaved during his presidency and the way that he is articulating his beliefs in this Time magazine article is far more nuanced. And I happen to very much agree with the statement that he just said. As we talk about all the time on this show, if you are pro-Palestinian, you are anti-Hamas. You are anti the manipulation that these despicable, evil groups who speak in the name of Palestinian causes do to Palestinian people. But I wish woke people could see that video. Not that it would ever convince them of anything, because they, no matter how much data and facts and truth you give them, it's like something happens in their brain. They can't take it, but very nuanced. But also, to Donald Trump's credit, he's very pro-Israel. He wants to support Israel. He said during this Time magazine interview, at the same time that he was criticizing Netanyahu and criticizing the IDF, he said, quote, "I've been very loyal to Israel, more loyal than any other president. I've done more for Israel than any other president. I will protect Israel. And he went through a list. He said, when I was president, I ended the Iran nuclear deal, which he did. He said, I made Iran broke, which he did. He said, I gave the Golan Heights to Israel, which he did. He said, I set up the embassy in Jerusalem, which he did. In fact, let's play that video where he is standing firm in his support of Israel. This is from also either 2017, 2018, don't have the exact date, but during his presidency.
We will also work to create a contiguous territory within the future Palestinian state for when the conditions for statehood are met, including the firm rejection of terrorism. Under this vision, Jerusalem will remain Israel's undivided, very important, undivided capital.
There you go. Again, this is a lot more nuance than anybody in any faction would lead us to believe. Where Donald Trump has walked the walk, he has supported Israel. He has also talked the talk. He has verbally supported Israel. But he also has criticized parts of, Israel's leadership or parts of their military strategy that he thinks are not in accordance with Israel's best interest. I think that's perfectly acceptable and indeed very nuanced for him to do. Another thing he talked about is we'll quickly go here. Again, any of these things could be like hours onto their own, but he was asked about the viability of a two-state solution in Israel, which is obviously a really hot button subject, as the Biden administration is saying that the PLO could take over, and rule Gaza, the Palestinian Liberation Organization. That is ridiculous because the PLO is A, totally ineffective, and B, would never actually survive because most of the Palestinians in these territories support Hamas. And when Israel gave Gaza to Palestinians in 2005, headed by the PLO, by 2007, it was taken over by Hamas. That is not a viable option for anybody involved, having the PLO run things. But Donald Trump was asked about a two-state solution. And he taught, again, this is nuance. The whole point of this show today is to show that he is very nuanced. And he is sort of admitting, or at least being very open about his thought process on these things and how he may have changed his mind depending on the changing circumstances. He says, quote, "There was a time when I thought that two states could work. Now I think that two states is going to be very, very tough. I think it's going to be much tougher to get." He really does repeat himself. It's like you can always tell when it's a Trump quote because he kind of says a sentence and then he says the same sentence right after. He continues, "I also think you have fewer people that like that idea." He's talking about people inside of Israel, which is true. According to a poll in January, 59% of Israelis, a public opinion poll that is, 59% of Israelis do not, at this time, believe that a two-state solution is viable. So Trump is saying that. You have fewer people that like that idea. Continuing, quote, "You had a lot of people that liked the idea 4 years ago. Today, you have far fewer people. I had a friend, a very good friend, who felt that it was impossible to make a deal, i.e. between Israel and the Palestinians, a two-state solution, because the level of hatred was so great. I disagreed with it, but so far, he hasn't been wrong." So Trump here, I think, is doing something very, something that is in accordance with what a leader does, which is saying, okay, I used to think this, and that doesn't mean he's wishy-washy. I think he's very strong with where he stands in a way that President Biden is not. But he's also, willing to say when his opinions have changed or how the changing situation requires a different look at things, where he's acknowledging that people in Israel many used to support a two-state solution. He said, I used to support a two-state solution. But now with this war and with a cash-flushed Iran and with, the changing circumstances that the post-October 7th moment has brought to us, and the Jew hatred that is inculcated in the population, the Palestinian population, they are brainwashed to be Jew haters. He's saying, you know, that he doesn't think it's possible right now to have a two-state solution. That's a very honest, I think, fair assessment of what's going on. And what I like about this is that he's seeing the reality and he's diagnosing it for what it really is. And meanwhile, we have President Biden who's like throwing out this idea of the PLO. It's like, are you kidding? Are you like, you don't have a sense of reality. This statement is indicating that Donald Trump has a sense of reality. But will the mainstream media give him credit for that? Will most Americans know this very nuanced take that he has with regard to the situation in Israel, being somewhat critical of certain people and strategies in Israel, but overall supporting Israel? Would most Americans know that? I don't think so. Sean, before I move on, you got any comments, or you want to stay away from the Israel subject and the abortion subject? It's like being at dinner with like a Thanksgiving dinner, and you have some super political relatives, and they're like, "What do you think about the 6-week Florida ban?" And you're like, "Pass the Sauvignon Blanc. I don't want to talk about this with you."
Yeah, no, I have lots of thoughts, and I fear I will struggle to make them coherently, my points. I hate the fact that everything is politicized, A. B, you started the episode by talking about the encampments on campuses, and I can't help but draw a correlation between those and the political encampments that we find ourselves in, where I think people are, not your viewers or listeners, I think they think for themselves for the most part, but there's a lot of people out there that don't think. They're intellectually lazy. I think a lot of our media has become intellectually lazy. And it seems to me to be a giant flaw in logic if you say, I'm in this camp, and then you work the facts back to where you want them to land rather than looking at the facts to lead you to what your conclusion should be. And I think that happens on both sides. I think it happens more on the left. But either way, it's bad. It's bad for the country. The media plays a huge role in the way we disseminate information in this country. And you know, like we've played the clips where the people on MSNBC won't even air Donald Trump speaking because they've decided it's better for you that you not have to watch that. I don't know. I know the media has always had a role in our country and politics and has been biased for a long time, yellow journalism, and it goes all the way back, and I hope I'm not rambling, but
You're not at all. You're not at all. By the way, I'm looking at the chat instead of making eye contact with you.
I think it's important for you as an individual. Maybe not everyone is capable of using their brain, and they follow that media, and that's where it becomes dangerous, but you have to, we talk about this, you have to fight. Part of what fighting means is that you're not a parrot. That you seek out facts and you try to draw the conclusions based upon the facts, not try to make facts fit your conclusion. And I think that's why we've ended up in this crazy place where neither one of us is 100% happy with the candidates. We feel like the nation is falling apart. But you really have to it takes effort. You have to work to find the facts. And that's what I love about what you're doing, Julie. I think it's important that you're talking about the nuance of Donald Trump today. Yeah, you're welcome. I'm happy to be a part of this, and I hope this message reaches people. Like I said something a few weeks ago about the monarchy, and I took some heat online, and I meant no offense. And you caught me at a time when I was tired, and I rambled about how I disliked the monarchy. And I just want to take a step back and say, I have tremendous respect for the British people and British culture, and the Queen Mum. Elizabeth was amazing for 70 years. She ruled with grace and dignity, and Britain is always our number one ally when it comes to foreign affairs and doing what's right. And I'm not I don't hate the monarchy. It's just a foreign concept to me that we would pay some family to be in charge. But at the end of the day, it's democracy, and whether it's a presidency or a monarchy, I'm good with it. I just don't spend a lot of time thinking about the tabloid aspects of it, and I don't care. So if I offended you with what I said, please allow me to apologize. There, did I get all that out?
You did.
Don't.
No, I'm glad
don't
you
be
said that.
intellectually lazy.
Well,
you know.
no, people. I love what you said, and yes, someone is saying yes, Sean. Most people are intellectually lazy, and someone's writing, "Don't apologize for your opinion." But I think your British monarchy clarification has a lot to do with this conversation, and it's that something that I think about is sometimes people say to me, "Why do you say your opinions online all the time? What if your opinions change?" And my response to them is, then they change. And I said them. And I can clarify and I can move on. I can apologize or go back. And, we live in this culture where people are intellectually lazy and that they don't like nuance, but people are also intellectually lazy and that they don't give people freedom to evolve. And part of life is you evolve. I'm not scared that maybe a year ago on Dennis and Julie, I said something that maybe now I have a different opinion on, because I'm a human being and I evolve. And we need to get to a place in this country where we're comfortable with nuance. And part and parcel of nuance is evolution. And so, and I think that's why people they don't want to read, I get not wanting to read an 83-minute transcript of the Donald Trump Time interview, but they don't want to actually take the time to read and to digest what he says on things like Israel. Because most things in life are nuanced, and if there is any issue in the world that is nuanced, it is the Middle East. Of course, there are some parts of it that are not nuanced. Hamas is evil. That doesn't, that's pretty absolute. Using women and children as shields is evil. Being anti-Semitic is evil. Raping, beheading, killing people is evil. Yes, there are some things that are absolute. But when we're talking about a two-state solution and who should run it and what the strategies of the IDF should be, and should they invade Gaza, should they invade Rafah, what should their PR be, should Netanyahu be in office, should he be elected, that is a very nuanced thing. And we can't reduce people to absolutes with that. And I just have to say, I really commend Trump for taking the time in this interview to talk about at length these issues and demonstrating the nuance that we all really need and the honesty that we all really need. Okay, so let's go on to the final thing. And I've just picked three. I think the three most important, based on how much they get talked about, that Trump discussed in this Time magazine interview. But if you are interested, oh my gosh, he talks about so many other issues, and I can do a subsequent episode on the other takes that he has. But let's talk about what he said about his political opponents. Because this is the one that gets thrown around probably the most. That Trump is a dictator. Trump is an authoritarian. Trump is going to seek retribution and jail people, okay? And look, Trump at times has been not eloquent, shall we say, with his comments. And we're about to play some of them. Where all of us, especially those of us who support Donald Trump as I do, wish that he would just be clear. Now, the man is always criticized. Nobody takes him in good faith. They twist his words. They make it a headline. We've reported on this so much on the show. The Guardian is one of the most garbage, news outlets ever. They take one thing that Trump said and they totally misrepresent it. He's the guy, when he's sarcastic or when he's joking, people always twist it. But of course, when you're the president of the United States and you're a candidate, you have to be careful. And I think we all wish at times he'd be more careful. Anyway, the reporter asks him in this Time magazine interview, he says, quote, "Sir, you said that you would appoint a real special prosecutor to go after Biden and his family." And then Trump cuts him off. And here's what Trump says. Quote, "Well, it depends what happens with the Supreme Court. Look, a president should have immunity. That includes Biden." This is a really important thing for people to know. That right now the Supreme Court is ruling on immunity with regard to Donald Trump, whether he enjoys presidential immunity from prosecution, whether any president does. And what Donald Trump is saying here is, my authority to appoint a special counsel to go after President Biden and his family and the corruption that has been revealed of the bribes that they have taken, among other things. I've done episodes on those pieces of evidence about the bribes. What Donald Trump is saying is, well, it depends on if he has immunity. And he's saying, if I have immunity, then Biden has immunity. Is that like what an authoritarian says? But no, it'll be very interesting to see if anybody actually talks about this or anybody puts this in their headlines that Trump said this. And then this is the kicker. This is like the one thing I want to print out and put on a billboard all around the country. The reporter asked if Donald Trump wants to hurt Joe Biden. Listen to this. Listen to this. I wish there was a video. I'm just reading the transcript. Ready? Quote, "No, I don't. I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to do anything having to do with." I guess he didn't finish his sentence. I guess he needs a that. "I wouldn't want anything having to do with. I wouldn't want to hurt Biden. I'm not looking to hurt Biden. I wouldn't want to hurt him. I have too much respect for the office." Will anybody acknowledge that he says that? I don't think so. Now, let's make something very clear. In this interview, Trump is very, very, very critical of Biden and the Department of Justice under President Biden, which has gone off to, I'm speaking like a British person. You brought up the monarchy and now I'm adopting the accent. That has gone after President Trump. He's very, very critical of President Biden. But he's saying here over and over, I don't want to hurt him. I'm not looking to hurt him. I have too much respect for the office. And he also said in this interview something that he has said many times. My retribution, the success of this country will be my retribution. That's what he says over and over and over. People have got to know it.
We've talked about this earlier. If Trump's intention was to hurt someone on the left, he would have done it during his presidency. He never once went after Hillary. Not once.
He didn't.
And
he didn't. And he said he did. He said he would. But
he said he
but
would,
he
and
never
he didn't.
did.
Right. And I look at Joe
Yep.
Biden. I don't hate the man. I think he is also a figurehead for that side. He typifies the feelings and well-being and hope for the future that side so relishes. But I look at Trump and I see a guy who looks at what's in front of him and reacts, rather than a guy who's just married to his ideology and spews accordingly. You know, Brady in the chat has decided to put down his keyboard and pick up a phone. Would you like to speak with Brady?
Well, I want to continue with a few more things, and then yes, if we have time, I would like to speak with Brady.
Okay.
But I do want to talk about this one other thing, which is in this transcript, Donald Trump was asked about a change to the 22nd Amendment. The 22nd Amendment limits presidential terms to 2 terms. And apparently, the Time magazine reporter said that the Heritage Foundation supports changing the 22nd Amendment to extend the presidential terms. I have no idea if that's true. Actually, Trump responded in this interview saying, "Oh, I didn't know that the Heritage Foundation supported that." But this reporter asked Donald Trump if he would support that. In other words, if he thinks that a president should be in office longer than 2 terms. And here's what he says, Mr. Authoritarian, quote, "I'm going to serve 1 term. I'm going to do a great job. We're going to have a very successful country again." And then the Heritage Foundation, not the Heritage Foundation, the Time magazine reporter cuts in and goes, "But you'd consider it?" As in supporting a change to the 22nd Amendment to allow presidents to serve longer than 2 terms. And Trump responds, "And then I'm going to leave." So he's saying, I'll serve 1 term, and then I'm going to leave. Okay, there's a lot more we could talk about. I am conscious of time. So we're gonna wrap it up, but let's go to Brady, because Brady's always very active in the chat. Brady, thank you for calling in. And where are you calling in from?
Hey, Julie. Thanks for taking my call. I'm calling from California.
Oh, whereabouts?
I'm calling from the Bay Area. I'm calling from San Francisco.
Cool. And what's your question, Brady?
So it's not so much questions. It's just a couple of comments. So I won't talk about character. I do believe that character is important and that our president should have a moral compass and moral character. I don't believe Trump has that. You could say what you want about Biden, but do you agree that Biden has character? He's a family man. He's a Catholic.
No, I don't agree with that at all.
Really? You don't think so?
I don't agree with that at all.
What I'm just curious, what makes you, and I accept that, but what makes you say that because I think he does, to me, seem like, he was just interviewed on Howard Stern, and he's been through a lot. Biden, death of his wife, death of his daughter, death of his son recently. But okay, why do you say why do you feel that he doesn't have character? And I realize this is just opinion, but I do have some facts that I also want to talk about if I have time.
Sure. And also I just want to tell you, and I'm sure I'm not looking at the chat, but I'm sure the audience would agree, and I'm sure Sean would agree. I so appreciate your tone, and I so appreciate your willingness to actually have a discussion. And I can tell that you very earnestly want to have this discussion, and I love this. So thank you very much for calling in. Yes, no, I don't. Let's put it this way: for all that Donald Trump is criticized about his personal character, then the same energy, if you will, needs to be given to President Biden. President Biden plagiarized when he was in
you're
law
right.
school.
You are absolutely correct. He did plagiarize.
He also has not acknowledged his seventh. Sorry, Brady. I'm sorry. I have to keep going. He has not acknowledged his seventh grandchild that Hunter Biden, his son, had.
He did acknowledge that grandchild.
He acknowledged it after Maureen Dowd wrote a piece saying it's seven grandchildren, Mr. Biden. Also, I don't think a person who takes bribes from foreign nationals and lies about it is a person of integrity. And Donald Trump, there is no evidence that Donald Trump has taken any bribes from anybody. And I have done this on this show so many times. There is mountains and mountains of evidence from the Hunter Biden laptop story of Joe Biden getting money through the Robinson Walker LLCs, all of the Hunter Biden and his associates LLCs, his family members, his kids getting rich off of that. That is the epitome of selling out your country. That is the epitome of abuse of power. And you can see I'm getting frothed up about this because that is not a person of integrity who does that to our country. And he may have very severely compromised our country through his bribes. Brady, I'm sorry, we can't talk over each other. We only have time for one or two more comments. Okay. Please give me one or two more comments.
Okay, fine. Since you were just talking about that, you have an advantage to me. I'm not aware of all of these bribery things. I do know that the emolument clause, part of the Constitution, because you're talking about business, that Trump did shady business practices as well when he was president. Accepting money.
Brady, this is not shady business practices. Also, I'm not really. I don't know what shady business practices you are referring to. I would love for there to be some specifics. This is not shady business practices. These are emails between Ye Jianming, who is one of the CEFC, that's a Chinese energy company chairman, emailing with Hunter Biden, talking about money for introductions, wire transferring millions of dollars to Hunter Biden, and writing that 10% will go to, quote, the big guy, who Hunter Biden's business associate testified was Joe Biden. I'll give you another example. There's WhatsApp messages between Hunter Biden and another, I'm sorry, I have to finish, a CEFC associate talking about how he will use his connections with his father to make sure that individual will regret not wire transferring the money. That is an abuse of power that is using your position in public office to get kickbacks, to get bribes and money. That is not a business practice. That is a politician taking a bribe and using his influence to take a bribe. I do want to give you the opportunity to speak, but for the sake of time, just if there's one more comment or one more question, and call into the show tomorrow, Brady, so we can continue. But is there any rejoinder or comment you have?
I'll move on from that. And then, I guess the only thing that I will say is, and I know Biden gets blamed for inflation, economy. You can't. The presidency is. I don't think it's a fair a thing to say that Biden is blamed for inflation. But if you're going to blame him for inflation, then you have to say that employment is at the lowest level that it's been in years, 3.8%, and the stock market is up 34%. So should he then get credit for those things?
Well, the reason why unemployment, why unemployment, in my judgment, is so is at these record numbers, as they say, is because, remember, we're coming back from the pandemic. And the Biden administration talks very much about the record number of jobs that they have created. And they're coming back from the dip during 2020 and people being laid off and not working. And, I think a lot of Biden's economic policies are contributing to inflation, mainly his energy policies, in being opposed to drilling and in treating to our adversaries for oil. Also, the Inflation Reduction Act, which didn't, in my judgment, really do anything to reduce inflation, but giving all of these subsidies for solar and kind of cash flushing these areas of the economy. I think in large part he is to blame for the inflation that we've seen. But look, I mean, the economy is a very complicated thing. I've never argued that the number one thing that I oppose about Joe Biden is the economy. The main things I oppose about Joe Biden are the border, are his foreign policy, the fact that he has taken bribes, the fact that he just overhauled Title IX, the fact that he supports these DEI programs in our federal government. Those are the main things that I oppose about Joe Biden. The economy, I oppose some of his policies. I don't think that they have been good, but that is a very complicated, big kind of thing with a lot of different factors. So I've never argued that the economy is the biggest thing that I dislike about Joe Biden. I hope that's clarified something.
Sorry, as far as the border policy, if the House would have voted for that border bill, it would have been the strongest border policy in 40 years. And then also, as far as foreign policy, I believe that Biden has strengthened NATO. 2 other countries joined NATO since Biden was elected. I don't believe that would have happened under Trump. And then finally, in the article that you were referring to about Israel, Trump was just stating his opinion. What would his policy be regarding Israel? You were just stating things that he had an opinion about.
Well, I think his policies on Israel have been proven that he would like to punish and limit Iran, not cash flush them and make them rich. I think he is wanting to help Israel navigate the best possible situation with regard to a 2-state or control of Gaza solution in the midst of this conflict. And the situation is evolving, I mean, yes, he's giving his opinion, but he's also indicating what he may do with regard to actual policy as it unfolds. But I think kind of the proof is in the pudding with what he would do with Israel. He's a staunch supporter of Israel, and he wants to punish Israel's adversaries. And that was one of the most salient parts of his presidency. Brady, I'm sorry, I really am. We're over time with this live stream, but I very much appreciate your calling in. I very much, as I said, appreciate your tone and your willingness to have a conversation. So I sincerely urge you to call in tomorrow or sometime next week when we have more time so that we can continue this. Obviously, I can't keep you on the phone forever because we have to move on to other things. But thank you for your willingness to engage in this dialogue, and you present great points. So hope you'll continue to tune in.
Yeah, I liked Brady a whole lot more in person.
I do too. You know what? Great conversation.
I welcome him calling in again. That was a great exchange between the two of you, and you need to talk about where you lay your head at night, my dear.
Oh yes, that's right. Thank you for always reminding me. Yes. All right. As many of you know, I use a lot of MyPillow products. I sleep on a MyPillow. I sleep on the Giza Dream bed sheets. I use my towels and I wear my slippers. And you can get a lot of these products at a discount too if you use the promo code Hartman. And right now, MyPillow is actually having one of their biggest sales ever. It's called a $25 extravaganza. You can get many products at $25. You can get 2-pack multi-use MyPillows, MyPillow sandals, 6-pack towel sets, 4-pack dish towels, all for $25. And orders over $75 will also receive free shipping. Just go to mypillow.com and use the promo code Hartman or call 1-800-566-6745 today and use the promo code Hartman, which is spelled with 1 E and no N. Yep, people are commenting on our discussion.
With no E.
Oh, did I say with an E? Oh, gosh.
Yeah, you said.
No E. Thank you. Yeah, I guess I don't know how to spell my last name. No, I wish we had more time. That was really great. And I so appreciate your comments in the chat. We gotta have conversations like this. And it makes us all better to hear counter arguments. So thanks to Brady. Thanks to all of you. And I'll see you tomorrow right here on the Julie Hartman YouTube channel for another live stream at 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern. Until then, be well. Take care.